o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to those who are here live. We've got a handful of people live with us, so thanks for joining. You are in a webinar, so I cannot see you or hear you, but you can certainly interact, and I would love to have your comments and your questions, and I will check the Q&A box throughout today's presentation. So feel free to throw things in there and we'll get to those throughout the talk today over the next hour and then definitely by the end. We're going to talk about grocery shopping strategies. So hopefully you have some experience with this. You have some, firsthand knowledge that you can share with the rest of the group. And maybe you'll learn a little, a few tips, a few strategies, but also maybe some things that you haven't tried yet shopping strategy wise. So hopefully you'll get a little something out of this that you can try implementing over the course of the month here. My name is Megan Ellison. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm also a certified diabetes care and education specialist. So that's what my credentials are there. And my master's degree is in nutrition. And we are doing this monthly series on budget-friendly ideas, so shopping and eating seasonally. And we'll have next month, the whole topic is on starting with starches. So how do you incorporate some staples in your life and maybe do some batch cooking, some fun things like that. But today we're going to talk all about shopping strategies. And that's going to include things like buying in bulk, ideas for reducing waste, utilizing all of your different forms of food, so fresh, frozen, and canned, looking at some price comparison and being a savvy shopper that way, shopping for using the ads and the digital coupons. Hopefully you have seen those. And then some people are using the apps these days as well, and even online ordering where you can pick it up or have it delivered. And just as a disclaimer, this is meant just for general education purposes only. We're not going to be talking about any like medical things, and this is not meant to be any sort of like medical advice at all. And thank you to Stilly Valley Health Connections, who is sponsoring today's talk. You can find the previous session. So we did a class last month in January of 2025. And other classes, cooking demos, and other classes that have been recorded on their website at stillyvalleyhealth.org. So if you're interested in other topics, other nutrition ideas, go ahead and check that out. And then for those of you who are joining us later on a recording, you'll also get the handouts along with this. And the handouts are also on the website. So check out the website if you feel like you've missed something. Okay, so food is one category where we have some discretionary spending. So, there's a baseline of, kind of a minimum that we really do need to spend just on feeding ourselves, on subsisting. But there is flexibility in that. With some of our other categories here, like housing, there's less in your control with the price of housing. Or even things like, insurance and healthcare, we have sometimes less control over those things. And the food is a category that for a lot of Americans is over 10% of the budget. Sometimes it's a lot higher than that. In fact, I recently had a patient who was spending as much as a couple, they were spending as much on eating out as they were on their mortgage. So, we can spend a lot on food. And one of the reasons he was coming to see me is to like do more at-home cooking and get some more ideas. So, this can be a really, really good area to save and have a budget and still have really good nutritional intake. That is possible. Okay, planning ahead. So I will say for most of my patients, this is at least half the battle. Like the planning ahead piece is the crux. Like if you don't do that piece, usually the rest is harder. So it does take a little bit of time on the front end to plan ahead, but it's going to save you time on the back end. So because you have a plan, you know what's for dinner. You're not standing at the fridge at 6 o'clock wondering, what am I going to make? Um, Also, less trips to the store because you've actually planned ahead for it. You can plan ahead to have some leftovers. So maybe you're cooking a little less and, doing a little bit bigger quantity. Lots of different reasons. The ones listed here, it saves money because you're not eating out, you're not doing as much takeout or delivery. You can plan for those leftovers. So maybe you get a lunch or maybe you get a second dinner out of that meal. Um, Having a list and sticking with it can help with the overall budget. If you're spending less time in the store, just naturally you're less likely to spend. So, the more time you're spending like trying to figure out what you're going to have, if you don't have a list and you're trying to think of it and make it up on the fly and you're wandering around the store, you're much more likely to do those impulse buys. And less trips to the store means less gas used. So hopefully you're saving some money there as well. So with this planning phase, think about a few questions. The first thing is, what do you already have? What do you need to get rid of? What's perishable that you want to use up? Maybe take a look at your freezer and pantry to see what are the items at the back that really need to be brought forward. So there's that first in, first out method that a lot of grocery stores will use, or they should be using. So, same thing with your at-home stores. You want to be like rotating through your stocks and not just having, that piece of that pork chop or whatever in the freezer for like years on end. You want to get through it so it's fresher, it's more nutritious, it tastes better, the texture is better. And even with canned foods, it's not that they necessarily expire, but their quality starts declining after that best use by date. And so you do want to rotate through things. And from a budget sense, if you're using up the things that you have in your cupboard, then you're basically just supplementing with, the extras. So you can see what you have, make meal plans, make ideas out of that, and then supplement with your current grocery shopping. Okay. Another way to think about this is, what food staples do you and the household eat on a regular basis? So I call this, it's kind of like using a restaurant like up to par system, where you always have a certain amount of the items that you use on a regular basis. So for example, for us, that's like, we always have fish in the freezer. We always have shredded cheese and shredded lettuce or some sort of lettuce, and we always have tortillas. So we can always make fish tacos. Fish tacos is our like, backup plan, 15-minute meal plan. And when we always have those things on hand, then we don't have to worry about like, can we make it or not? So as the tortillas are getting low, they automatically go on the list to get the, next batch at the store. So we never truly run out of those things. So think about your staples. And then think about what's on sale at the grocery. So this is where you would go to the app or go to the website or even like a newspaper ad. We still get those, in our mailbox on a regular basis. So you can just physically look and see what's on sale, because that might actually prompt you to make some meal plans based on the best deals. And oftentimes those best deals are also associated with what's seasonal. It might not be seasonal here, but maybe it's coming from a place where it is seasonal, like citrus, for example, in the winter. And so you can get better deals on that because they have a lot of it at once. So it's playing into that seasonal eating, even if it's not seasonal, right where your location is. And then do think about what you can substitute. So a lot of the recipes, you can substitute, for example, a less expensive protein. That is often a really great place to save some money, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Or maybe you can substitute a vegetable. So choose one that is on sale or that's seasonal to put in a recipe and just swap it out. And then also think about what you want to cook, right? Like, what sounds good? What are you in the mood for? And that will often change with the weather or with the seasons. So listen to that. If you're feeling like soup, something warm and comforting, It also gives you a little bit more hydration, which we have a hard time getting in the winter. So, pay attention to the things that you're craving as well. Okay. So planning out a few meals around your weekly schedule typically does really help with this like list process. And for most people, you don't need to plan every night. Like most of my patients that I see, planning like 4, maybe 5 nights a week is enough to get through an entire week because inevitably you're going to have some leftovers. You're going to have a night where, the grandkids have soccer or whatever's going on and you end up, doing something different for dinner. If you plan every single night, what I find is oftentimes then it's too much, like people buy too much at once. So 4 or 5 nights a week tends to get people in that realm where it's plenty to get through the week and still have some leftovers. Okay. Add to or make small changes based on what you already have to decrease food waste and save money. So, for example, sometimes I will take a can of soup that we have. Maybe we just have one can and I'm trying to make it like split between a couple people. I will add some frozen vegetables from the freezer, maybe some beans from another can, maybe even like a can of chicken, add some protein to it, a little bit of water, extra broth, just make it go a little further. So you can get creative with like what you have and what you can add to it to just make that go a little further so you're getting through some of your stock and saving some money in the process. Okay, shopping weekly ads to get a grocery list created faster. That can be helpful. And then think about, some substitutions, use the item on sale. Okay. Let me just check let's see if there's anything in the Q&A. Not yet. So, are you guys making a grocery list? Guys and gals, are you making a list? And if so, go ahead and put it in the Q&A like what are you doing? Is it pen and paper? Is it something like on the fridge? Is it in your phone, like a notes list in your phone? Is it an app? Like, how are you planning right now? What are you using to plan? I would love to have your input. And maybe you're not planning, but okay, someone says, I have a list app on my phone. Yes, I love the list apps because you can actually, when you're at the grocery store, you can like click it and you get that satisfying, like it crosses it off. Yeah, that's great. And then you know that you've got it in your shopping cart. That's fantastic. The example shown here in this app is actually a shared grocery list. So there are apps out there where you can share it with like a partner or with like a roommate. If you're using the same fridge and cooking together and, one of you ends up at the store, you can see what's on the list and cross those things off. And then maybe somebody else ends up at a different store and you can get the things from that store. So sometimes it's nice to have a shared list where everybody's on the same page and then you can all be interacting with it whenever it works in your life. Okay, Janet says both phone and or paper. And then Nancy says, my list is on paper and hangs on the fridge. So when we're low, we can immediately add it to the list. I love that. Yeah, if it's handy, like a list on the fridge or your phone, because our phones are usually not very far away from us these days, and you can put it in right away or write it down. That is so helpful because we do tend to forget. It's easy to forget and like, go on with our lives. And then we're like, what was that thing I wanted to get at the store? So write it down. And then everybody else gets to see it too. So if you have somebody else that helps with the grocery shopping sometimes, or if somebody's, a teenager is standing at the fridge going, where's the milk? And they see milk is on the list. It's kind of obvious we're out of milk. So it gets everybody on the same page if you have it on the fridge. It's kind of nice. Okie dokie. And then Robin says, I do online ordering, lets me know my total and trade out meals and products to meet my weekly target. Yep. Love that. Okay, we're gonna get to the online ordering thing at the end here. And Nancy says, I have used the app called Milk Money also. Oh yeah, okay. So you're, using like a food budgeting or like a way to, kind of look at your food um, expenses and really be conscious about that. I love that. Okay, so make sure the list is accessible. Try and decrease your trips to the store if you can, just because you're going to decrease that likelihood of impulse purchases. And or consider bypassing the store altogether with like the pickup or the delivery where you don't have to go in. And some people like to actually make their list based on the layout of the store. So there's this really great My Plate handout that does gives you a list by like category. So it breaks up the categories of food just like it is on, the plate, or back in the old days we used to have the pyramid. So you can think about like your fruits and vegetables. There's usually a dairy section, proteins like a deli or a fish counter, and then, other things. So you could break it up that way if that makes sense. And then you're not like, wandering back and forth to find the item. So it's all together when you're in that section of the store. So you're getting everything at once, makes it a little faster. And then do think about the layout of the store too, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit, because you might want to like be strategic about how you go around the store. This is an example of a meal planner that we've used at our house where oftentimes it's not even this exact, detailed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with like little bullets and everything. It's just literally a piece of paper with a line down the middle stuck on the fridge, and then MTW, for the days of the week. So the days of the week give us, what the dinner is, especially if that's the meal that's hard. That's usually the hardest meal for most families to like figure out, because you've got your lunches kind of planned, or you've got leftovers for lunch. Breakfast, we usually have, a rotation of 3 or 4 breakfasts that most families just use on a regular basis. But it's the dinners that tend to be a little bit more tricky. So we'll just plan out the dinners. And then on that other half of the sheet, we're looking at the pantry, looking at the freezer, looking at the fridge, seeing what is missing in order to make those dinners. And then those missing items go on the grocery list. And then literally I'll just take a picture of it like on my phone. So then I just have that picture of the list with me. We also have a little, we call it a boogie board. So I made a note of this here. It's kind of like a whiteboard. You know how a whiteboard you can erase, and you could find them now where you they're magnetic, so you can put them on your fridge. We have something called a boogie board that is electric in the sense that you can write on it and then hit a little button and it'll clear, it'll like erase it. So we have that on the fridge now, just because it's not as messy as a whiteboard. And we'll use that for planning these days. So that's what we've got on the fridge right now. The notes in the cell phone work great, or the picture of the list. And then here are some apps. If you really want to try an app, you could look into some of these. Paprika is great for saving recipes and creating lists, like grocery lists. Mealime is great for quick recipe ideas. Like if you just need some inspiration, that would be great. Whisk is the best budget app. It's completely free. Meal Prep Pro is more about like the prepping ahead of time and like batch cooking idea, where you're kind of setting yourself up for the week of eating. And then Cook List is nice because you basically put in everything you have. Like let's say you've got a deep freeze, you put in everything in there, and the date, it tracks it by date, and will help to remind you to use up things by a certain date. So you're going through your stock a little bit faster. So that can be helpful. But you can also just like literally use a list on the side of that deep freezer. When you put the thing in, make a note of the date that it went in. So you can think about like, when should I be using this by? Or, oh yeah, that, hamburger's down at the bottom and I'm just not seeing it, so I'm not using it. But if it's on the list and you can just quickly look at the list without even having to open up that door, that's even faster and gets you rotating your stock a little bit more. Okay. And then, okay, you guys have already answered this question, grocery lists. Okay, so let's talk about the shopping itself. So that was all prep leading up to the shopping. So you can organize your grocery list according to that store layout, like I talked about. Skip the aisles you really don't need to be in. You know, it's going to save time, it's going to save money, and those impulse purchases. Some of those aisles, you know, really don't have the nutritious foods that you want to be emphasizing anyway. And for some people, it's easier just to not even see it, right? Just like bypass the chip aisle, for example. Not that there's anything evil about, you know, chips every once in a while as an occasional food, but for the majority of time, we want to be trying to emphasize whole, real foods. Consider the store brands because they're often cheaper, and also the bulk bins because you can get exactly what you want or like the, you know, right portion, so you're not overbuying. And often the bulk bins are cheaper by pound or by ounce, however they're measuring it as well. Do compare products for the best deal, and we're going to do a little bit of comparison in a minute here. And when you're standing there in the grocery store, it's really helpful to, like, you know, look up and look down. Oftentimes I'm like down on almost on the floor, like to get the product that I want that's a little cheaper, or maybe it's less processed. Like, for example, like a whole grain rice. We really like the sweet brown rice, which looks more like a white rice and cooks like a white rice. It's a little sticky like a white rice, but it is a whole grain. But a lot of stores don't, you know, they don't have it in the eye level real estate in the marketplace. So it's like low and like in a little tiny bag. So, you know, some of those things that are cheaper and possibly healthier are oftentimes not at eye level. So, you know, change up your strategy or change up your like physical method when you're shopping, and you'll see some different things. Okay, so here's a typical layout of a grocery store. So oftentimes you've probably heard like shop the perimeter, because oftentimes like the produce is at the perimeter, the deli and like fish station is at the perimeter, the dairy like on the outside. However, they are changing things up lately. Like the Fred Meyer in Linwood here just recently redid all of their layout, and now I can't find anything. So sometimes they change it up, and then you're wandering around wondering where things are at. So sometimes like you might be able to skip whole aisles here. Like maybe you don't need any baking or condiments and you can just skip this whole aisle. Maybe you're really not spending money on beverages. That's actually a really great place to save as far as food budgeting goes, because those beverages add up really fast and they're pretty much superfluous calorie wise. Like, you know, it's either added sugar and caffeine, oftentimes, and preservatives, if it's like soda, for example, or even things like, you know, the sparkling waters, which are 0 calorie and give you some nice carbonation, but are pretty spendy. And we tend to spend quite a bit on bottled and packaged beverages in this country. So that's a really great place to save. What else? You might skip the chip slash bread or like processed food aisle if you don't need anything there. The one aisle I wouldn't skip though, that like kind of is usually in the center, is like your canned goods, like your vegetables, your beans, and your like whole grains, like whole grain pasta, rices, couscous, quinoa. You know, you want some of those staples in your life. So sometimes you got to go into those aisles, into the middle of the store to get those items. But think about the layout at your store and how you can be a little bit more strategic about it. Sometimes I will on purpose go to a smaller store. If I know I just need like 1 or 2 items, I will go to like maybe a Sprouts or like a Trader Joe's where I can get in and out really fast. Or even like a grocery outlet where I can get in and out really fast because it's smaller instead of the bigger grocery stores. So you can be strategic about like where you're shopping as well. And I like to vary the shopping location because you're going to get different deals, but also it helps you get out of ruts. You know, a lot of times we get in ruts with our eating and our, shopping, cooking, all of that. And that goes back to like, how are we buying food in the first place? So sometimes it's nice to change it up and like try the ethnic markets, for example. A lot of times the markets that have more of those like ethnic spices and produce offer much better deals, like price wise, and or like you can buy things in bulk. For example, like they'll have the bulk carrots that are, these big carrots, but not in a package. So you can get like exactly the amount that you want. Like you can go in and buy 1 carrot if you want. You don't have to buy a pound of carrots. So it's nice for that reason too, because you can literally like buy in smaller quantities because they have it open in like a bulk kind of scenario. What else? Here are some examples, like in my neck of the woods in the Linwood, like South Snohomish County area, grocery outlet. I often go there for specific things like hummus is a good deal, yogurt tends to be a good deal. And then they have an organic section where sometimes like they'll bring these products through that I don't see anywhere else that, that are kind of being tried out in the market, like bars and, fun things like that. So I always check out the organic section at grocery outlet. And then sometimes they have really good cheeses as well. So that's a nice option. And then JD's Market is an ethnic grocery store that caters more towards like Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, a lot of spices, like Asian produce, really good produce options. Things from India. So I've traveled to India a couple times. So like I want the authentic, like roti, for example, or the authentic spices or lentils. So sometimes I'll go to JD's Market for those things. And then H Mart and Ranch 99 are more geared towards Asian cooking, as in like, Japan, Thailand, Korea, China, a lot of really good herbs, good deals on produce at those places, and really good seafood options, like an expanded variety of seafood. So it's kind of nice to, expand your horizons with your shopping location. And then I often have a commonly used list of ingredients for the various stores that I go to, because I try and go to most grocery stores just because then I understand like what my patients are seeing and what they're experiencing at all these different stores. So I'll have certain items that I like at the certain stores that I'll buy from different places, but sometimes I forget like where do I get that particular item, like the hummus from grocery outlet, for example. So sometimes it's nice to have like just a list of the commonly used items at those stores, like your up to par list, and then you can run in quick, grab those few things and be done with that store. Okay. Where are you guys shopping? Speaking of different grocery stores, where are you shopping and where are you finding really good deals while you're shopping? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about bulk, buying in bulk. So it's almost always cheaper to buy in bulk, not 100% of the time, but typically. And that could be from like bulk bins, like you see in this picture here, where it's like, you pick the amount that you are going to purchase. Brown rice, for example, or sunflower seeds. But it could also be bulk in the sense of it's already packaged for you bulk, like Costco, Sam's Club. Costco's the one that, we always talk about here because it's local. So, consider buying in bulk if it makes sense. Things like nuts and grains, and spices, you want to kind of think about how long those things are going to last, because those things will start going bad over time. And if you're somebody who is not, you're cooking for maybe one or two, you're not going through those quickly, then I would probably go to like the bin area where you can just get exactly the amount of spice you want, or like exactly the amount of rice you want, compared to, you know, a bulk packaged item like from Costco. So think about how much you really need and how fast you're going through it. You can also put these things in the freezer. So like nuts, for example, that have the really great heart healthy fats in there, the fats can go rancid over time. So, you know, if you've had a can of peanuts in the back of the pantry for years, they're probably bad. Smell them, make sure they're not musty or off or rancid smelling. And if they are, throw them out. Same thing with your oils. You know, if you open a oil you haven't, you know, tried in a while and it smells off, it's not healthy anymore. It's been oxidized. So go ahead and just start over and then think about, you know, getting through those things quicker, but you can't keep them in the fridge and the freezer. So for example, like with chia seed, because you buy a chia seed and even if you buy a little package, usually we don't get through it fast enough. So we keep it in the freezer because it has those great omega-3s, those fatty acids, but we want them to be fresh. We don't want them to be rancid. So think about the fridge or freezer, even for your grains, especially if it's a whole grain, because the whole grains have the germ in there still, they have the fats. So for example, let's say you buy a whole wheat flour at Christmas time and you bake, you know, have a baking, you know, extravaganza in December, and then you're not baking again until the summer, put that flour in the freezer so that it stays fresh. You don't want to be eating rancid flour. Okay, I know that's kind of went off on that, but it's a big deal. People are oftentimes not going through their food quickly enough. Remember, bigger isn't always better, you know, if you're not going to get through it. And don't overshop on items that will go to waste. So if it's like a fresh item and you think, oh, I'm really not going to get through this giant thing of bananas, you know, if you can, pare it down to exactly how much you want to get through this next week. So just pick 2 or 4 or however many bananas you can get through. And then before you shop, make sure you have, I think that says at the bottom, I can't really read it. I think it says, I would assume a snack. So you're not going hangry, but oh, storage space. It says storage space. Freezer. Freezer and storage space. Yeah, do you have a place to put it? But also don't go hangry. Have a snack before you go. Okay. Let's see where you guys are. You put in any places of where you're shopping? Oh, I don't see any answers. That's okay. If you have any others that are not the stores that I mentioned already, go ahead and put those in the Q&A. Okay. Unit comparison. So this goes along with like the bulk shopping, but even for things like yogurt, where you can buy the big container of yogurt, or you could buy the little container of yogurt, or you can buy the big can of tomato sauce or the little can of tomato sauce. You really want to be looking not at the price. You really want to be looking at the price per unit, price per ounce, price per pound, however they are measuring that unit, and really comparing. When you're doing a comparison, look at the unit price, and it's usually a little smaller. Like they'll put the big, you know, total price in big numbers and the unit price is teeny tiny, so you might need your reading glasses for it. But it's worth it because, like, look at this yogurt example. The bigger container is less than half the price per ounce as the smaller containers, and environmentally, you're spending less on plastic at that point. Now, the small container is convenient in the sense of like it's giving you a portion, you can take it with you to work, for example. So if you need that convenience, then that's a choice you get to make, but make it with some, you know, consciousness, some thoughtfulness, because it might not be worth it. Like maybe you're scooping that yogurt out anyway and making a little parfait with it where you're adding berries and some muesli or granola, and then it doesn't matter And so then you'd be better off with the bigger container of yogurt. So think about how you're using that item and when you're doing your cost comparisons, look at the unit price. And, in this case, we're comparing the same brand, but look at the different brands, right? Because oftentimes the different brands vary dramatically from each other in the unit price. Okay, looks like people are shopping at Winco. Winco is fantastic for the bulk bins. They do such a good job with that. Some of the best prices around, and they have good produce too. So I love Winco for that. It is cash or like debit card, like you can't use a credit card there. So just be aware of that. But yeah, really good selection. Hey, Hagen is like, that's nice for fancier things or for like their deli section. Safeway, I've got a Safeway right around the corner from me, so we're often stopping there just because it's the most convenient. And Safeway does a really good job with their app and with the digital coupons, which we'll look at in just a minute here. So a lot of times you can find really good deals with the coupons and with their weekly ads. Let's see what else. Food co-ops. Yeah, food co-ops are nice for finding very specialty items. Or if you just want to be shopping more locally and know your grocer, like that's fantastic. And then Janet says she's using the digital app savings with Safeway. Good job. Oh, great. LB says I do online grocery pickup at Fred Meyer and also go to grocery outlet to find deals. Yeah, great. You've got the best of both worlds there. I love that. Okay. Let's talk about a few low cost items that really should be part of your pantry or should be staples because they are year round good deals. For proteins, that would be things like beans, lentils, tofu pound for pound, because it is as bioavailable and has a complete complement of all your essential amino acids. It is as good as like beef, like red meat, when you think about protein content. Now it tastes different, so you got to learn how to cook it. But the price for tofu, like you can get a whole 16-ounce thing of tofu for like $2.50. That's a really good deal for a pound of protein. So tofu is a fantastic deal. Usually eggs are a good deal, not so much right now, right? We've got kind of an egg crisis going on. For grains, do you think about the bulk bins? There are some, like in the bakery section of the grocery store, they'll often do discounts on day-old bakery items. Sometimes I'll grab a day-old baguette, like if I'm going to make croutons out of it, or it's going to become crostini, like I'm going to slice it up and toast it anyway, then it doesn't matter. Or if I'm going to make like breadcrumbs out of it or something, the day old, it doesn't matter if it's a little crusty. And then we do have outlet stores, like around here, we have the Franz outlet that a lot of my patients really enjoy. So I actually haven't been there myself, but people say it's lovely. Let me just look at the Q&A really quick. When eggs are super cheap, like they were in early summer, I buy a ton and dehydrate them. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. How are you doing that, Lisa? I would love to know what you're using, like what method you're using to dehydrate your eggs. Okay, fruits and vegetables, think beyond fresh. Fresh is not necessarily like the best. In fact, nutritionally, a lot of times our frozen fruits and vegetables have more nutrients, like are better, higher in certain nutrients, like for example, vitamin C, than the fresh on the shelf thing that has traveled, was picked early. Because your frozen and your canned items, they're actually picked like at peak ripeness and they are immediately either flash frozen or canned right away. So they maintain that nutrition. They start out with more nutrition a lot of times to begin with, compared to the quote unquote fresh that are picked early in order to be able to have time to transport them. So, the frozen is a great way to go. as long as there's not a bunch of extra stuff in there, right? Like you want it to just say broccoli, not broccoli plus a bunch of salt or cheese sauce or a bunch of preservatives, right? Same thing with your canned items. Ideally, the canned are going to be low salt or like no sugar or even no salt added canned. And our canning process has gotten so good these days that, because it used to be we really needed the sugar and the salt as preservatives. When you're doing home canning, for example, you don't want to cut too much on the sugar and salt because you're not getting things up to temperature like the manufacturers can, and the quality control is a little bit different at home. But our manufacturing processes have gotten so good these days that they can without those added, salt and sugar, which are basically hygroscopic. They hold up the water so the bacteria doesn't get to the water, so it can't reproduce. But you can find like beans with no salt added and peaches with no sugar added. So do be looking for that on your labels. And then, of course, if you are having a garden or you have a little bit of a green thumb, you could be doing your own processing, doing a little bit of your own freezing, for example, like chop up that kale, wash it, chop it, throw it in the freezer, then it's ready to throw in a soup or a casserole, for example. I say kale because kale just goes crazy here, and my kale like overwinters. So I always have something green in the garden. So if we run out of our lettuce, for example, I can always go out and grab some kale leaves and chop them up and put them in whatever we're eating. So do think about like, not just the fresh, frozen, canned, and maybe you're doing your own freezing, your own canning. You could plant a little indoor herb garden that is year round. Like if you wanted fresh chives, or if you wanted some oregano or basil, that's a really nice addition so that you've got like some fresh herbs, and herbs tend to be pretty expensive in the grocery store. So, it's cheap to get a little pack of seeds, and then that can last you for many plantings. Okay. Lisa says, I use my dehydrator with the fruit leather inserts. Works great with milk too. If you don't have inserts, parchment paper can be cut out and used. Okay. Wow. That's great. I've never dehydrated eggs before. So I do a lot of fruits and vegetables and even herbs because we have an herb garden. So I'll save things like oregano and, rosemary and things like that. But I've never done milk and eggs, so I'll have to expand into that. And then Nancy says, I grow a garden and can something, beans, carrots, blueberries, tomatoes, sauces. Yeah, so you can just put all of those things that you are growing into like a stew or just freeze them as is, like the blueberries, for example. I love that. And then Lisa says, my kitchen windowsills are full of herbs. That's fantastic. They smell good too. And they get you to add those nutrient dense items that add a lot of flavor and a lot of like nutrition without a lot of extra calories, which is nice. Most of us need more nutrients, more vitamins and minerals. Okay, a couple mindfulness questions. So just think about your grocery store habits. Are you buying the expensive brand just because it's the expensive brand when a store brand or a different brand would be just fine and cheaper? Sometimes we get into the habit with that, or we have like a feeling about it. And then if we check that feeling, we're like, where is this even coming from? We don't necessarily need the most expensive thing. Like that can of beans that's half the price of this other one is probably going to be very similar. So think about that. Do the extra items in your cart, like take a look at your cart and see, does the cart match with how you want to be eating? When you think about a plate, that plate method, quarter some sort of starch or whole grain, quarter protein, half vegetables. Does your cart reflect that? Are there lots of veggies? Is there a lot of color? Do you have some, whole food carbohydrates, some good protein sources? Or is it other stuff in there? And does it meet your health goals, and also does it fit into your budget? And then sometimes we are shopping out of emotion. So, definitely we often eat out of emotion, but also we can be shopping out of emotion. So, are you making choices based out of a stress response or some sort of emotional response versus out of your rational plan, which if you have your list and can stick to your list, that'll make it easier so you can just get the things that you really know you truly need, and then actually address the emotion in a more direct way. Now, maybe you're just hungry and you need a snack. So this is like the don't go to the grocery store while you're hangry kind of thing. Maybe you're just irritable because your blood sugar is low. And so maybe you get a snack while you're at the grocery store that's really going to satisfy that, like a little trail mix, for example, or like a bar where you can see real ingredients, like you can see nuts and seeds and dried fruit in it. Something that's quick, something that is made out of whole foods, ideally. So maybe you have a little snack, get a reset, and then stick with your list and get out of the store. Get home and get on with your life. But think about your shopping habits and put a little mindfulness into that. So with reducing waste, we already talked about a mix of fresh, frozen, and canned. So you've got that variety to choose from. And then try and get through your fresh items first. And if they're getting a little too ripe, feel free to throw them in the freezer. Like, don't feel like you have to just let that banana go bad on the counter. If it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, this is perfect ripeness for me, and I know I'm not going to eat it, put it in the freezer. It'll be great for a smoothie or banana bread or something in the future, even if it's a small amount of something, like even if it's just a little bit of leftover, for example, cilantro, and we're going away for the weekend. I know we're not going to use it. I can chop it up, put it in a Ziploc bag if it's dry, like make it just dry, or put it in a little, the ice trays, put it in an ice tray with some water or some oil if I want to use it like in a soup or a sauce in the future. So even like little bits like that, we have a lot of food waste in this country. 40% is the estimate of post-consumer. So like by the time it gets to us and to the restaurants, so to the people and to the people who are serving food, we waste about 40% of our food. So if you can even just cut down on your own internal food waste in the house, that could be 40% actually. I mean, if you're average, right? It might be more, it might be a little less, but that's a lot when you think about the savings that could equate to. So think about how you can like use your freezer or use your dehydrator like Lisa's doing and save things in a different form for the future. Now remember that your best if used by is not an expiration date. We talked about this last time. At the last class, we really don't have expiration dates here. We just have like the date by which maximum quality is still guaranteed. Then after that date, the quality might be declining. But a lot of times we get in this habit of like, oh, we'll check in a date. I almost just said an expiration date, and we'll throw something away because it's past the date on the can or on the whatever. But that's not an expiration date, it's a best quality date. So you really want to be using your senses, your eyes, looking for any colors, molds, things like that, your nose, and your taste buds, because that's really the best indicator of whether something's good or not. For bulk purchases, yeah, consider getting those big bulk things home and then breaking them into smaller containers. So for example, like you get a bag of avocados, you get 6 in a bag, but you don't want them all ripe at the same time. So put, a couple in the fridge, a couple on the counter. I put a couple in the garage. So they're all at different temperatures. So they're ripening at different speeds. So the ones on the counter get ripe first, and then the ones in the garage, which are a little cooler, and then the ones in the fridge. And I'll just rotate them out from the, garage to the counter, from the fridge to the garage. And then you have something ripening all the time instead of like this onslaught of, a produce item all at once. And then what are you going to do? You could make a big batch of guacamole. That's true. But sometimes, it's too much all at one time. So, think about where things are going and strategic placement. Okay, let's talk about, we've got 10 minutes left. Let's talk about the coupons. So newspapers on your receipts, a lot of times when they print out the receipt these days in the store, they'll give you a coupon for a little extra something. And it's usually when you're using your rewards cards at these grocery stores, it's something that they know you like. So look at those coupons that they print you, because it's usually like your brand of yogurt or your brand of hummus, because they know you. That's the whole point of the using the rewards, is they want your information. They use it in aggregate, but then they can also give you rewards in the sense of like they give you discounts on the things they know that you're going to use. And then electronically, you can go online ahead of time. Like let's say when you're doing your planning, your meal planning for the week, just pull up the website. That's easier, like on a bigger screen, like a laptop or something. You can really like zoom in. Sometimes I'll zoom in on the price and the price per ounce and like, is it a really good deal? Or like on the app, if you have the app, they'll show you the deals from the week and what's on sale and what has a digital coupon. And then sometimes the stores have special days, like they'll have a double or triple coupon day, so you can check with the store and see, if they do that. Some stores will also price match. So if you only want to go to one place and you're like, hey, look, Safeway has a sale going on their yogurt right now, on their specific brand of like Chobani yogurt. Will you match this? Fred Meyer might match it. So you can always ask. And then remember that coupons aren't a good deal if it's just causing you to buy extra things, right? So don't, buy the extra thing just because you think it's a good deal and then you're not going to use it or not going to eat it, or it's not going to support your goals, right? Okay. I was going to play a little video, but you can just, if you want to learn a little bit more about this, go to the websites directly, because they will, walk you through how these coupons work. Here's an example from Safeway. Various in-store, they have this thing called For You. It's just kind of clever marketing. So you can see here on this first picture, on this first sign, the price is $24.99. They've got it on sale in the store for $19.99. But if you use a digital coupon, which would be using that app, the Safeway app, you can get it for $16.99. So that's a pretty good deal. That's a lot of savings right there. And what you would do is like scan that to put that coupon, put that thing into your phone, into your app. So let's take a little bit deeper look at this. So all of our products have this little barcode associated with them, just like you do when you go check out at the self-checkout section. So we're used to those barcodes now. We use them all the time. And your app will scan it when you open that app. And it'll scan the barcode and put that exact thing in. So for example, like here, this white chicken, 2 for $6, a whole $1 off. That's a good deal. I would want to snag that deal. So I'm going to scan that barcode with the app, and then it'll save it in the app. One tip with this though, make sure that your phone number, the number that you're using, matches the one in your app. Because like if you have a rewards phone number, for example, that you punch in, or like a rewards card that you like slide, you want to make sure that it's the same phone number on your app so that they're talking and syncing, so that you really do get all of the deals. And you can go to your account. If you didn't set it up that way in the first place, you can change it. So you can go to your account, click to your personal info, and then update the phone number used in the store. So for example, we used to use like bogus phone numbers because we didn't want to be tracked. And now I don't care. Like If they know that I like Chobani yogurt, I really don't care. And that information is used in useful ways to kind of inform back to even like the FDA and the USDA what people are actually purchasing. So I don't mind being part of that. So, we use real phone numbers these days. And sometimes they'll even like, with your cell phones, they'll have you verify that it really is you. So they'll send you a little code. And then use the app to plan your shopping trip. Like you can open it up before you even go, look at the deals, look on what's on sale. And one tip, before you get to the store, open the app, right? Have it ready to go because you don't want to be standing there and like seeing a digital coupon and you're like, oh, I want to get that. And then you're like, where's this app? And you're frustrated and you want to just like get out of the store. Open it up, have it ready to go. Remind yourself of your list and like what's in your coupons that you've clipped that's in your app. It'll make it a lot faster and more enjoyable. Okay, so if you're using the app, you're going to see what's on sale ahead of time, plan menus, especially around the fresh items that you want to get through. Like this avocado deal, I would totally take them up on that deal. $1 for an avocado, that's great. And when you do this, when you use the coupons and you use your rewards, again, they will send you future deals on items that you'd like to purchase. So it's kind of also in your future going to save you, which is great. Sometimes they'll also give you rewards for other things, like cents off of your gas at the pump. So oftentimes, like my in-laws will save up until they've got a really good deal on gas, and then they'll go through and like gas up both vehicles on that one card with the discount to get all those rewards. So, good deals like that. Okay. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is pickup and delivery. So a lot of my patients have not used this. Some have, but a lot of my like lower income patients haven't used the delivery options because they feel like it's too expensive. But I will say that even though there's a price associated with it, that price goes down. So for example, this example of Amazon Fresh, usually their delivery price is $9.95. But if you order over $50 worth of groceries, then it goes down to $6.95. And $6.95 is pretty much like what I would spend in an impulse buy, probably, if I was at the store and not following my list. Plus, you think about your time and the gas. So sometimes it really does make sense to just utilize these really new convenient options we have these days. But there are some fees. So do look at the fees. I will say that I have saved quite a bit by using the Amazon Fresh app specifically because they have these deals of the week, or they have the like what do they call it? Last chance, like this last chance avocado here. Things that they're trying to get rid of. Like one time I got blueberries for like $1, like a whole container, because they're trying to move it and make room for new items, or it's something that is fresh and needs to be eaten right away. And I can get it home and throw it in the freezer. If I don't want to have the blueberries right now, I can eat them in the future. So they just want to get it out of the store so that they don't lose that revenue. So sometimes you can get really good deals by using the last chance and the weekly savings through the apps. And with all of these, you can instruct the shopper because you're not doing the shopping. So if there's something that comes up, like for example, I had picked a different oatmeal one time and they were out of that oatmeal. So then you get a little message saying, what would you like to substitute? And you can have options to substitute. So this can be really helpful for people who either have, very little time or some mobility issues, or like you're working and you just want to like put things into a list because it will save your list of groceries. So you could work on a grocery list over the course of a week, get it all in there, and then pick your delivery window or schedule your pickup window. So then that order is ready at the time that you want it to be ready. So that can be also very convenient. Okay, let me look at our Q&A, see if there's any other. Lisa says, just started lettuces, spinach, and kale in the windowsills from seed. Yeah, lots of sprouts. Good job. That feels very springish. Feels very hopeful. Love that. And then Fred Meyer Boost, which is their delivery service. You get deals that you otherwise would never get, special coupons. You don't have to use your time, gas, and wear and tear for basic shopping. You can still shop clearance and use the app and the account so that your personal, it tracks you so that you get the deals. Yep. Oh, I'm so glad that you're having a good experience with that. It's kind of amazing, the options these days. Thank you for that input. Okay, here's the recap. You're going to plan, ideally plan a menu for the week. Maybe not the whole week, but most of the week. And then look at your ads, see what's on sale, make a list and stick to the list. Don't overbuy on perishable things, or if you do, get them in the freezer or deal with them so that you don't just waste them. Preserve and store your food correctly. Plan for some leftovers. Make from scratch as often as possible. So that really helps you to avoid the convenience and processed foods, which really just means like you are knowing what goes in it. So usually it is a little healthier. It's usually lower in salt, for example. So you get to control that. Buy some generic brands instead of the name brands. Do that searching at the top and the bottom, not just at your eye level. Or if you're on the app, it's even easier to see. Do some cost comparison on the app. And look at the price per ounce or per unit instead of just the total price. And then think about your bulk bins as well. Don't forget about those. And maybe try some apps or online shopping if you haven't so far. And then you can let us know how it goes next month. Hopefully we'll see you guys next month. I've got one more slide. One more slide here, I believe. So next month is starting with starches, budget-friendly base meals. And it's the same time and same place, March 25th, 4 o'clock. It will also be recorded. So if you have to miss it, just make sure you're on the list so that you get the email with the recording and you get the handouts. And you will get the email from Stilly Valley with those items from today's class sometime later this week. They'll have it probably by tomorrow. So they'll get it out to you in the next couple days here. And then do check out stillywvalleyhealth.org for other classes, both the classes that have already been done, but upcoming classes, because we'd love to see you at like an in-person cooking demo in the future, for example. So have a fantastic month, everybody. Thank you for your input. I appreciate that. And hopefully I'll see you at a future class. All right, take care.